Okay, welcome everybody. Today we're going to go over all the releases for all the applications in the month of July. I have it pulled up on our trainings and meetings page. So the next one's August 15th. But to go to the recap page, go to the bottom of this. And we'll start with USAS for July. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So in the month of July, we had one regular release and one hot fix. The regular release implemented the ability for ITCs to help with any districts that may be converting from another software at calendar year end boundary. So that's been implemented, and that's the only time you would use that currently is to assist with the calendar year-end conversions. And then the hot fix for USAS was right around July 1st. And it was in regards to one receipt code that we missed and put a start date of 7/1/2025 on a receipt code 1831 that's been used before. So that was an error. We fixed that. And then there was a bug that had to do with querying checks for an invoice. So that's been fixed. And then another account code dimension issue around July 1st was to fix the validation behind the scenes that when the account code dimensions had a date, but the count did not, it corrected that behavior. And then there was one or two count changes for districts that still showed that they were running, but they weren't no longer running, but it looked like it because it showed the status of in progress. So we fixed that to unlock it and have the district move on with that. And then lastly, for USAS, there was an upgrade to the Gradle version in the app behind the scenes. Any questions on that? For inventory, we had one regular release and one hot fix. I'm going to kind of go backwards because the bug that was on the hot fix included the fiscal year end report bundle. It wasn't emailing, and currently that is working after this bug was fixed. So now, until document store is implemented, the fiscal year end bundle for inventory will get emailed. So then the improvement, the new feature is the SOC 1 audit bundle that can now be downloaded or submitted to the auditor of state via the SFTP. So I'm going to go into the system for that. This is the inventory, and you can find this new feature under the report menu, and they're in alphabetical order, so you'll find it down here. Also, in the documentation, it's in alphabetical order, just like the menu. So this is what it looks like. It's going to generate these three reports, which you're familiar from seeing in the other applications. The user listing report is in a text format, and it's per the auditor's requirement. But that now includes the two-factor authentication as well as the password expired fields. I'm going to I'll show you these reports in a moment, but the options here, you can download the zip file for your files. This will most likely go away once the document store is implemented, because you won't have to download it and save it to your computer because it'll always be there in the document store. But until then, you can download it. You can also schedule to send it to the auditor of state immediately, or setting up a cron job. So if you click on that, you guys are familiar with setting up a cron expression, and then the documentation has those free apps that you can use to set up that cron expression, which the cron expression is just the time that you, or the interval that you're telling the report bundle to generate. So if you want it annually, you set it up annually. So, and then once you click either one of these two options, you submit it. But every time you click that button, it is going to go to the auditor of state cloud or whatever area where that sits for the auditors to gain access to. So if, for instance, somebody clicked it 5 times, it's going to get submitted 5 times. So we had to put a cancel job here so you can cancel those other 4 times. So let's download it and we'll take a quick look. And again, it's going to generate a zip file for these 3 reports. The authentication password requirement is going to be in a PDF. The default break-in detection and invasion rule report will also be in a PDF. So here's my zip file. I've got to move it to my screen. So like I said, the user listing report is per the auditor's request to have it in a text file. But you can see the external authentication and the 2-factor has now been added to the user listing. I apologize if you can hear the lawnmower and the weed whacker outside. I don't think you would be able to, but just in case. This is the PDF for the authentication and password. And we added, it's going to look a little bit different because inventory doesn't store all the organization information in the system, but we did put the district and the IRN onto this report so that you can tell which report it's for, as well as the time and date that this report was generated. Same thing with, oops. With the other report, the default break-in, it's going to be in a PDF form, and it's going to have the district IRN and the time and date of the report generated. Now the files are, just going to go to the documentation to show you. There's samples of the reports that I showed you, but the file names are in this order, which is the district IRN, fiscal year, SOC inventory, and the timestamp. And like I said, there's the free online cron expression generators that you can use. Now, once those jobs are complete, you can view it under the system configuration job menu. So under this tab, it would show once I submitted that to the auditor of state. It's not going to show for the download that I just showed you, but I'm not set up to send the Sampleville schools to the auditor of state, nor do they want it. So any questions on that? They're going to start with inventory, and those features will, once that'll be implemented in other applications. But that is all I have for USAS and inventory. So if you think of any questions, just put it in the chat, and then I'll pass it on to Lori for USPS July releases. Have a good weekend.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me get things situated here. Share my screen. Okay, we will go ahead and move on to the payroll changes for the month of July. Hopefully everyone's had having a wonderful fiscal year end and that's going smoothly. Um, we will start by talking about the improvements. The first improvement was the benefit update and projection, the accrual option. It now will ignore all archived positions when determining if an employee is eligible for that particular leave. And this goes for all leave types. So it's now ignoring any archived positions and it will only look at those that are not archived when it goes through and does that check to see who is eligible for that accrual. The next improvement was um, deals with overtime and there's ORC 124.382 that specifies that overtime does not qualify for those part-time sick leave accruals. So prior to that, we were including overtime hours in that uh, current service hours field. And that will no longer be the case. So we're going to exclude overtime hours when those, service hours get accumulated. And that's based on that regulation. So the link to that Ohio Revised Code, that particular 124.382 is linked here. So if you have any questions about that, you can go to that particular, legislation, that revised code area where it talks about, excluding overtime. And then, just I'm sure you're all familiar with what I'm talking about when I'm saying those current service hours. But if you would go to somebody's leave screen and you look at their sick leave, it's actually the service hours accumulated. I'm sorry, the current service hours here is what will no longer include those overtime hours. So when you go to, actually accrue that for your part-time employees, then those overtime hours are going to be excluded. The next improvement is the ability to run the employer distribution after a payroll it actually needs to still be posted, so I will make that a little more clear to help determine if there are any account issues. So what was happening is, districts would process their payroll and the, account that salary account that they use during the payroll process is a valid account. So they're able to charge that salary account, that pay account. So they post the payroll, all is well there. Then they would run the employer distribution when it got to be that particular point in time. If that, benefit account existed on the USAS side, then all is well. If it didn't, we really weren't validating that until they created the submission file. And then they would, send that to USAS or try to send that to USAS, and then that's when we'd run into troubles. So we're trying to catch that sooner. And for those of you that remember like classic days when they would run the report, any account that wasn't valid would be listed on the report. That's what we're trying to, attempt to do. So we've moved that error checking to actually, be on the report itself versus when they create the submission file and try to send that on to USAS. So, if you would go in and, run the employer distribution, so, they would need to remember to run this after they've posted their payroll. So, if they're used to running that a little bit later, we're gonna wanna move that, right after they post their payroll, just to verify accounts. And again, if a salary account or a pay account is valid, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right account. And that's where the trouble lied. So, there probably aren't benefit accounts set up for that salary or pay account that they're using, that might be inaccurate. So, again, if they're getting errors, if they run their employer distribution right after they've posted their payroll, they can catch those accounts, that may have been charged incorrectly during the payroll process, and unpost the payroll, correct the salary account, the pay account, and then post the payroll, run their employer distribution again, and make sure it's error free. So we're trying to catch that sooner, and then that's also going to be helpful in correcting those pay accounts that may have been charged incorrectly. So, they're going to run their employer distribution as they normally would, and they're going to want to run it, if this is the first pay of the month, and they run, employer distribution several different ways. They're going to want to do that to check all of, the information, just like they would at the normal time in their processing. If it's the end of the month, they might be running it for a different set of, report parameters, and they're going to want to continue to do that. This is kind of the preview option or projection option, if you will. So what's going to happen then is, whoops, thought I had my report up here. Let me bring that up again. Sorry about that. What's going to happen is if we scroll down to the bottom of the report, any account that is not a valid, benefit account is now going to be listed on the report. So it's going to, give them a heads up that, hey, this expenditure account isn't, found on the USAS side. If it's valid and that's truly the account they need charged, then they're going to need to add that on the USAS side, sync the accounts, and then, rerun this and make sure that all the errors are gone. If it's not, I kind of made this object code up. So if this isn't the correct object code or account, then we need to probably look at what account was charged during the payroll process. And chances are this, the original pay account was not charged correctly. So we need to unpost the payroll, correct the pay account on the employee, and then repost the payroll. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on that? Because it is quite different than how we're used to, handling that employer distribution. Okay. So I would strongly encourage, to add this step to your payroll checklist. Have them be checking this report basically before it's too late. So they're not having to do, a bunch of extra work to correct those accounts after the fact. And then once, the report looks good and, everything's being charged the way it is, the amounts are right, then they can continue on with their processing as they normally would. And if it's not, the right time to process their employer distribution, for real, so to speak, they can come back to that at the appropriate time, in their processing that they're normally, they're used to working through. Okay. I don't see any questions, so we'll go ahead and keep going. That was, our major improvement, when it comes to The last bullet there, that's just a behind the scenes kind of thing for the programming side of things, so nothing that would be user related. Moving on to the bugs, we made some enhancements to the STRS Advance fiscal year to date report. And the first was to correct the rehired retiree employees that were retired and rehired during the fiscal year. What was happening was prior to this change, and I think, we had several reports of this. Try to make this a little bigger so you can see it. Retiree line. So you can see here, one's noted as no and one's noted as yes. The amount of the STRS advance was listed on both lines and it was the exact same amount. So obviously this is not correct. So we now corrected that issue so that the proper amounts will be listed on the, each line. And along with that fix, then, it corrected the submission file. And then obviously you'll no longer get the error that you're receiving that, that mismatch for an active STRS payroll item. So the fix will correct both the submission file and obviously you will no longer receive the error on the report itself. The next update to the STRS Advanced Fiscal Year to Date report is there was an issue with when we go out and we capture the date range to count the STRS days. We are actually using the historical position pay group date ranges. So for those districts that use the additions option, and they're maybe using a different set of dates for different pay groups. It was not looking at those dates, specific dates for those specific pay groups. So we changed that to now look at the employee pay group instead of the position pay group. And so it will capture those individual dates for those different groups of people. If, the district uses the additions option. So that prior to the change involved adding adjustments to get those days corrected, and that will no longer be necessary. So going forward, it's after this was corrected, it's using those dates or capturing those dates correctly, and the right number of STRS days will be listed on the report. When it comes to the check STRS advance report, we now no longer include voided payments. So for those of you that are not familiar with this report, this is the report that districts are going to want to use after they're out of the advance, and for some reason the advance doesn't balance. So it goes out and it captures all the history of what happened in those amounts that the employee actually paid over those summer pays or those pays that involve the STRS advance on it. So it's an option under the STRS reporting. And if you'll see, it's the first one listed, check STRS advance. So, they're entering those dates then. It would be the period beginning date of the first payroll of the advance, and the ending date would be the period ending date for the last payroll of the advance. So it goes out and it captures all those amounts for all the employees, and it has a grand total at the bottom. And then it gives you a look at all those amounts for those different people. So you can then verify or compare, if you will, the STRS advance report that was sent to STRS. So the amounts that were that should have happened over those summer pays compared to what actually happened over those summer pays. So any discrepancies then are going to be those employees that didn't balance, and that should then help you, determine why, there's an amount remaining in that STRS advanced configuration screen. Okay, so again, we no longer include voided payments, so prior to that, they were not being subtracted off, so it was inflating that total. There was an issue with the audit report um, and custom fields in the way that we were auditing those fields, and that was causing that entity not found exception error. So that was corrected. So that error will no longer happen. And then next, there was an issue that was introduced with the whoops, that is not the right year. I'm so sorry about that. 2025 .10 release. I'll get that corrected. In the way we were handling the voiding of a payee payment. So if you remember last month, we pointed out how we're now actually cloning that, if you will, so you can actually see the detail of that payment. It remains there. It just, clones that instead of removing it. But what happened when we made that change was it actually prevented the employer amounts from being placed back into the outstanding payables. So that has been corrected, and now when a payee payment is voided, everything should go back into the outstanding payables as expected, and the user can, proceed with paying that or posting that payment. Next, we had reports one morning, and several of you reached out and said, "Hey, my email notices, are failing for districts. Any jobs that were, scheduled basically in the job scheduler were failing." We apologize for that. It was something that was introduced with the 2025 .13 release. And that was, something that kind of happened in all applications, or it was introduced amongst all applications. So the development team worked quickly to get that resolved. So we apologize again for inducing panic, because I understand how when districts their employees aren't getting their direct deposits. And that doesn't mean that the funds didn't get deposited in their accounts, but they, that's kind of like their security blanket. So it does, cause panic and a lot of probably phone calls to the treasurer's office, and then, that just trickles upstream. So we apologize for that inconvenience for that short amount of time. And then lastly, there was, a soap service update that was made. And again, that's behind the scenes kind of thing. So nothing that the user or you would have seen. And then we also released a patch to correct some payroll history for a specific district. So again, nothing that would have been visible to everyone, just a specific district. And that is all I have on the payroll side of things. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we covered? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat, so I will stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Happy Friday, everybody. I am going to talk about the ESS recap for today. Is everybody seeing my screen here with the new features and improvements?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So there were 3 items of 2025-12 was regular release, 13 was regular, and then we also had a 13.1, which was a fix. So I'm gonna go here so you can see that. The first item was that there is a new tab that's been added to the W2 view area, and it will include the W2C, which is the W2 correction. So if I was to go in as an administrator, I think I logged in too soon here. But you do have to, first let me say that you do have to have under the configuration area, system configuration, and then ESS functionality. Under this area here, this check mark needs to be checked in order for them to see this information. Otherwise, they won't have the option on their screen. So if I go up to view W2, which I can't do as an admin, sorry about that. I'm going to log in as Brent, my favorite person. And we will show you that screen. Brent can see his W2s and print them. This is the regular W2 form, and then there's another tab for the W2C. So they'll be able to see that, and I do have an example, which I do not have with my particular user there. But what it'll look like is this screen here. It will have the year, and then they can download it or view it, either one. On the next, the way those get to be displayed here is through USPS. So they would have to go in and create the W2C forms and submit them, and then they'll be able to see them on the ESS side as well. Okay, so the next item we have that's a new feature is the W2 acknowledgement grid. This is now available for admins so that they can see whether the user has given consent to receive their W2s electronically. So now I'm on here, Brent, and we did show this before, but he can go into the W2 acknowledgement area and give consent. And then they will appear on the district screen. So I'll show you that as well. And again, the configuration would need to be on for the W2s in order for this to be on their screen. So district W2 acknowledgement. And how this screen works is that if the employee gave it a consent, it will show here. If they revoked consent, it will also show the day and time that they revoked the consent. So to know whether or not they actually gave consent, you would filter for the true, and then it'll give you all the ones that have given consent. The other thing I wanted to show you is that these with a blank mean that they just didn't give consent or revoke. They haven't done anything with it yet. Also on this screen, they will be able to, the admin will be able to download and print. Let me find a true one so you can see that. So if I do Brent's again, I can download it. And it will show me that he did consent to receive his W-2s. Okay, go back to the releases. There was also another new feature on that same area, was that there's a new PDF download that was added for viewing the W-2 rules. So if I go back into that screen, I can. Right at the top of the, again, I have to be in as a person, sorry. Should have showed that last time when I was on it. So here's the download for the IRS employee notice. So this will provide the instructions from the IRS for their W-2s. It's the same thing that would come in on the printed form. So the employee can print that right from there, and that will be updated yearly so that they can see what's most current. So that is it for the new items, the new features. Any questions on that? Okay, on the improvements. Going forward, the timesheets are going to ignore any line items with 0 hours worked as you're exporting them. This will, I'm going to show you and I'll look at Brent's again. So on his timesheets, we'll take a look at this first one here for the 19th through the August 1st. And I have one row here, which is on the 25th with 0 hours and 0 break time. So when you log in as the admin to extract that, and of course they have to be approved first. Go to Timesheet Manager, Timesheet Export. And when I go to select that one for Brent, that was this one right here for the first week of August. You make your selections and then you export it. Oh, don't know why that came out blank. Oh, there it is. Okay. You can see here, like the 23rd is there, the 24th is there, but the 25th is not, because that one was all zeros for the hours worked. Okay. And then, so that was an improvement. The audit report, when you go into system and run an audit report, it is going to require both a start and end date. So if I go in to system here and try to run this one of these audit reports, I will have to fill in this start date. The stop date defaults to the current date. It can be changed. You can adjust it any way you like, and then run the reports that you want. So that was another improvement. The W-2 mass email, excuse me, provides a notification on the user interface now. Prior to the release, it was not indicating when you clicked on save to send the emails to the employees, it just didn't look like it was doing anything. So now it's giving you indication that it has successfully sent the emails. And I can show you that as well. So if I go into W2 mass email, let's say I adjusted this and I forget to save the email template. When I click on save, what's going to happen, or send, I'm sorry, what's going to happen is the email will go to all active users that have given consent to receive their W2 electronically. So when it's ready, you click on send emails, it gives you this information, and then you click on send emails. And it's thinking for a second here. Okay. So it worked for me when I did my test. And I will show you what that screen looks like so that you can see it. Yeah. So this is what it'll look like. It'll say operation successful. And the W2 email will save. So when I clicked on that test, I added in the word test, it did save it. Even though I did not say save template. So if you click send email, it will do both. It will save and send. And I'm going to cancel out of that. And then, oh, there it went. I saw it. It clicked, it flashed green. So I'll have them check that again to see what's going on with that. Sorry about that. So the next item we had is a timesheet auto generator. It will now handle the holidays just like the manual timesheet creation did. It was not doing that before, but now it is. So if there is a holiday and the auto timesheet generator runs, it will put the HO in there for holiday, so that it works exactly like the manual one now. Okay, and then what on the hotfix, what was happening with that, the leave requests, direct post was posting the information to USPS, but then it was not marking the ESS leave request as exported. So now it is doing that and talking back to ESS to let them know that those leaves are exported. The next item, the leave request adjustments. These were incorrectly preventing the user from entering the leave from that has been offset with the
Mary?
adjustment.
Mary, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
That prior bullet, where the leave request direct post option was posting to USPS but not marking as exported. What would you recommend a district do if they did that and their requests that they've already exported are still marked as approved? What should they do?
what we do for that is we recommend that you export them out, but don't upload them. So just export them to a .csv.
Just a manual. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, just to fix the ones that were left over.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this one for the leave request adjustments was not allowing them to create a leave after putting the adjustment in. It's been fixed, however, we still have not enabled this feature again. There still are other changes that need to be made, and then they'll re-enable the adjustment feature. So that one is still on hold. The user grid role, I was in there working one day, and we'll go back to the user grid real quick. So what happened is on one of the, because of what they were working on for Ippy Dippy, it kind of interfered with what is happening in ESS. So this column right here was not filtering anymore. It was giving an error. And now it's working. So thankfully, because this is my favorite feature and I don't want them messing with my favorite feature. So I'm very happy that that's working again. And then the other item that it was a bug, the user grid now, we had someone let us know that when they locked the users, that the admin account was also locked. So the grid has been updated so that you cannot lock the admin account. So if I go in here and I click on admin and a few other people and I want to lock the users, it will give me an error or a warning that says that admin cannot be locked. And again, this was not flashing that fast last week. It is now, so I'll find out what's going on with that, because it should stay on the screen for a couple seconds. So at least you won't be able to lock the admin. I hope that didn't go too fast. I'm sorry about that. The next bug was when you were printing the W-2 acknowledgement, if someone was in process of, say, changing their mind from giving consent to revoking, and on the screen they would say, and I will go there so that you can see this, because it was kind of confusing. Oh, I locked Brent. That's great. Let's go to somebody else. So Craig is going to give consent under his profile. If I was to say revoke consent, prior to the fix, it was allowing me to print the acknowledgement even though I didn't save, and it would say revoked consent. So now it's forcing the save or submit prior to being able to print, which is the appropriate way. Okay. And it's telling you the date's not correct because that's when it was before. So I have to pick a new date, which is today, and then I'm going to submit that. And now I'll be able to print the acknowledgement. Oops, there you go. And this was another bug that the developers had found, that the user mass load functionality was not working correctly because of this last login column, and that has been fixed. So if you're doing mass load again, it should work properly. And then the last item was that there was a bug preventing the timesheet reminders from being sent, and that also has been fixed. Internally, there were some Spring Framework changes, and those are things that you can't see on the front end, so that's been fixed as well. Is someone else doing the workflow release? I mean, I could just bring that up. There was a new release for workflows. They're updating it to include the this information for the IRN and organization name. So you wouldn't see any of that on the front end either, but that's been fixed as well. And I think that was it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pat to say goodbye to everybody if there are no questions. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share. And
All right, so
thank you.
I guess that's it. I do have, I showed you guys what was coming up next time. And I don't have my, oh yes, I do. I was gonna say I don't have my screen. I was multitasking, but I think you can see. Can you see the meetings and trainings, or did I share the wrong one? Either way, you guys all have a good weekend. And this recording will be on the meetings and registration page. And the next Fridays with Fiscal is gonna review the W-2 digital delivery and the setup for both USPS and ESS. So have a great weekend. Bye.